The Depth Below, Part 1. The Expedition. The Meridian wasn't much to look at, just 30 feet of weathered fiberglass cutting through the Pacific. Captain Sarah Chun had seen prettier vessels during her 15 years at sea, but this research expedition only needed a crew of 3. Small, efficient, and supposedly perfect for a 2-week mission studying deep-sea thermal vents. That was 6 days ago, before the readings started making impossible jumps, before the water started singing. Sarah stood at the helm, watching Dr. Marcus Harrison adjust his instruments for the 100th time that morning. The marine geologist had barely touched his coffee, now growing cold beside his laptop. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He hadn't slept well since day 4, when they'd first detected the anomaly. "These readings can't be right," he muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. "The depth finder shows we're over a trench that doesn't exist on any chart. And the water temperature." He trailed off, squinting at the screen. Emily Wong, their marine biologist, emerged from below deck with her tablet. Her usually neat ponytail was coming undone, black strands falling across her face. "Captain, you need to see this." Her voice carried an edge Sarah hadn't heard before. "The bioluminescence readings are off the charts, but there's nothing visible. It's like the light is there, but somehow hidden." Sarah joined them at the monitoring station, studying the cascade of numbers that scrolled across their screens. 15 years of Pacific crossings had taught her to trust her instincts, and everything about this situation felt wrong. The air was too still, the waves too regular. Even the seabirds had vanished 2 days ago, leaving them alone in an empty sea. "I swear I heard singing last night," Dr. Marcus said suddenly, his fingers drumming an irregular pattern on the desk. Like a choir, but wrong. The notes didn't make sense. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Emily shot him a concerned look. "Maybe you should get some rest, Marcus. We're all a bit strung out." But Sarah had heard it too, though she hadn't wanted to admit it. In the pre-dawn hours, when she'd taken over the watch, there had been something in the wind, a harmony that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. The ship's radio crackled to life, spitting static and fragments of their own voices from previous transmissions. Sarah reached for it, but before she could adjust the frequency, a new sound cut through, a deep, resonant tone that made the windows vibrate. Dr. Marcus stood abruptly, his coffee cup tipping over unnoticed. "There!" he shouted. "That's what I've been hearing. But it's stronger now, clearer." The tone shifted, becoming a complex melody that seemed to bypass their ears and vibrate directly in their bones. Emily's tablet slipped from her fingers, clattering to the deck as she pressed her hands against her temples. "Captain," she whispered, "look at the water." Sarah moved to the starboard rail, her heart pounding. The Pacific had gone glass smooth despite the wind, and in its surface, she could see shapes moving in the sky, shapes that vanished when she looked up. But it was what lay beneath that made her breath catch. The water had begun to glow with a pale, pulsing light that reached down into impossible depths. And in that light, something vast was moving. "The sonar," Dr. Marcus called out, his voice cracking. "Whatever's down there, it's bigger than a blue whale. Much bigger. And it's not alone." The singing grew louder, and Sarah realized with growing horror that she could almost make out words now. Words in a language that human vocal cords could never produce. That was when Dr. Marcus started crying. Not from fear, Sarah realized, but from joy. Tears of luminescent green tracked down his cheeks as he smiled at something only he could see. "It's so beautiful," he whispered. "Can't you hear what they're promising us?" The Depth Below, Part 2, The Descent. Sarah lunged for Dr. Marcus, but she was too late. He vaulted over the railing with impossible grace, his body arcing through the air like a diver in slow motion. The splash was swallowed by the singing. "Marcus!" Emily screamed, rushing to the side. The water where he had disappeared was glowing brighter now, pulses of bioluminescence spreading in concentric circles. Sarah grabbed the emergency beacon and life preserver, but froze before throwing them. Marcus had surfaced, floating face up in the eerily calm water. His eyes were open, gleaming with the same otherworldly green that stained his tears. His smile was rapturous. "The water," he called up to them, his voice harmonizing strangely with the underwater choir. "It's perfect, like amniotic fluid. We were all born in the ocean, don't you remember? And now we can go back." Emily started to respond, but her words turned into a choked gasp. Shapes were rising around Marcus, dozens of pale, elongated forms that seemed almost human. Almost. Their skin had the translucent quality of deep-sea creatures, and where their eyes should have been, there were only glowing orbs of seafoam green. "Those are people," Emily whispered, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. Were people, the missing vessels, everyone who disappeared in this region. The figures moved with liquid grace, surrounding Marcus in a loose circle. Their movements were choreographed, almost ritual, and they were singing, the source of the choir they'd been hearing. But now Sarah could understand the words, though she knew she shouldn't be able to. "Return to us, children of the shallow world. Return to your first home, your true home. The deep mother awaits." The ship's instruments went haywire. Depth readings fluctuated wildly, and the radar screen showed massive shapes moving beneath them in impossible patterns. The radio burst into life, playing back every transmission they'd ever made, but reversed and layered into a haunting counterpoint to the choir. "Captain," Emily said, her voice tight with fear, "something's happening to the water." The bioluminescence was spreading, turning the Pacific into a vast mirror of starlight. But the reflection showed a sky that wasn't theirs. A sky filled with writhing shapes and geometric patterns that hurt to look at. And below, in the depths, something vast was stirring. Sarah felt it before she saw it, a presence, so ancient and alien that her mind recoiled from its existence. It rose from the abyss like a mountain of flesh and light, its true form mercifully hidden by the limitations of human perception. What they could see was bad enough, a shifting mass of tentacles and eyes, each bigger than their boat, arranged in patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves impossibly. Dr. Marcus laughed with joy. "The deep mother. She's so beautiful. Emily, Sarah, you have to join us. The transformation barely hurts at all." The transformed humans, Sarah, refused to think of them as people anymore, began to sing louder. The sound vibrated through the boat's hull, resonating with something primitive in Sarah's hindbrain. She felt an overwhelming urge to dive into the waiting waters, to let the deep mother remake her into something new, something eternal. Emily stumbled backward, clutching the railing. "Captain, I can feel it in my head. It's like it's rewriting my memories, making me remember things that never happened. Or did they?" Sarah gripped Emily's arm, anchoring them both to reality. But even as she did, she saw that Emily's eyes had begun to change, green light bleeding into their corners. The Meridian's hull groaned as something massive brushed against it from below. The deep mother was rising, and with her came the truth about humanity's origins, a truth that had been waiting in the ocean's darkest trenches since before the first fish crawled onto land. They had all come from the sea, and the sea wanted them back. The depth below, Part 3, the transformation. The deep mother's presence turned the night into false dawn. Her bioluminescence pulsed in patterns that made Sarah's vision swim, casting shadows that moved in ways shadows shouldn't. Dr. Marcus had fully transformed now, his skin taking on the same translucent quality as the others, his movements becoming fluid and inhuman. Emily's grip on Sarah's arm weakened. "Captain," she whispered, her voice harmonizing involuntarily with the choir. "I can see what they mean now. About our true history. We didn't evolve from apes that learned to walk upright. We were engineered. The deep mother created us as an experiment, sending us onto land to see how we'd develop. And now," she trailed off, green tears beginning to trail down her cheeks. Sarah fought against the memories trying to rewrite themselves in her mind. False memories of ancient cities beneath the waves, of a civilization that had watched humanity's every step from the depths. But were they false? The certainty of her own history was unraveling with each passing moment. The ship's instruments had given up any pretense of normality. The depth finder showed impossible numbers, counting down into negative figures. The GPS displayed coordinates that didn't exist on any map. And the radio was speaking in their voices, but telling stories they'd never lived. "Your resistance is beautiful," Dr. Marcus called up from the water, his voice carrying impossible harmonics. "But it's also futile. The deep mother doesn't force anyone. She reveals, shows us what we've always been." His new form rippled in the glowing water. "Did you never wonder why humans dream of the sea? Why we feel so drawn to the depths? It's cellular memory, calling us home. A massive tentacle, gentle despite its size, rose from the water and caressed the Meridian's hull. The metal sang in response, resonating with frequencies that made Sarah's teeth ache. More of the transformed humans emerged from the depths, their bodies arranged in geometric patterns around the ship. They were beautiful now, in a terrible way, their forms perfected by whatever process had claimed them. Emily stepped forward, her movements becoming more fluid. The green had almost completely claimed her eyes. "Sarah," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I understand now. The Deep Mother, she's not just calling us back. She's saving us. From what's coming. The dry world. It's ending. But below," she smiled, and her teeth had become mother-of-pearl translucent. "Below, we'll survive. We'll thrive. We'll become what we were always meant to be." Sarah backed away from her friend, bumping into the helm. The key was still in the ignition. Maybe if she could start the engine, break free from whatever held them here. But as she reached for the key, her hand passed through it like smoke. Reality was becoming fluid, transforming just like the humans in the water. The boundary between air and sea, between flesh and light, between memory and truth, all of it was dissolving. The Deep Mother's voice filled Sarah's mind, not in words, but in concepts that bloomed like bioluminescent flowers. Return/transform/transcend. What walks on land must return to the sea. All paths led home. All depths welcome their children. Dr. Marcus and his choir began a new song, one that made the stars above pulse in time with the Deep Mother's light. Emily swayed to its rhythm, her transformation accelerating. Her hair floated as if underwater, her skin beginning to show the first signs of translucence. Sarah felt the change trying to take hold in her own body. Green light crept into the corners of her vision. New memories surfaced, swimming through ancient ruins before her ancestors had learned to walk, singing with voices that could split atoms, dancing in formations that could alter reality. But she was still fighting, still holding on to something. A truth? A lie? The boundary between the two was becoming as fluid as everything else. The Deep Mother stirred again, and this time, Sarah saw her true form. Not with her eyes, human eyes could never process such geometry, but with something older, something that was awakening in her genes. And in that moment, she understood why everyone who saw it either fled in madness or surrendered in joy. The Depth Below, Part 4. The Truth. The truth hit Sarah like a pressure wave. The Deep Mother wasn't calling them home. She was warning them. Through her transforming perception, Sarah finally understood the patterns in the water, the geometric arrangements of the changed humans, the impossible mathematics of their song. It wasn't a choir of worship, it was a formula, an equation written in flesh and light, designed to rewrite the laws of reality itself. "Emily," Sarah called out, her voice carrying new harmonics she couldn't control. "Look at their formation. Really look. They're not just swimming, they're calculating." Emily paused in her transformation, the green light in her eyes flickering. The scientist in her wasn't completely gone. The patterns, they're like molecular structures, but wrong. No, not wrong, evolved. Dr. Marcus and his choir continued their mathematical dance, each movement adding to the equation. The Deep Mother's tentacles wove through the water in corresponding patterns, her bioluminescence pulsing in sequence. They were building something, preparing for something. "It's not about returning to the sea," Sarah said, fighting to hold on to her humanity even as her skin began to shimmer. "It's about surviving what's coming from above." As if in response, the false sky reflected in the water rippled, showing them glimpses of what waited beyond their atmosphere. Things that made the Deep Mother look familiar by comparison, ancient, patient, hungry. They had been watching humanity's progress, waiting for the right moment to harvest what they had seeded eons ago. But the Deep Mother, the entity humanity's ancestors had fled from so long ago, had been preparing. Each disappearance, each transformation, was another calculation in her grand equation, a formula to rewrite human DNA, to transform her children into something that could survive the coming harvest. "We're not her prisoners," Emily whispered, understanding flooding her transformed features. "We're her shield, her weapons." The choir's song reached a crescendo, and Sarah felt the last of her resistance crumble, not in defeat, but in acceptance. The transformation wasn't a surrender to the depths, it was an evolution. The Deep Mother hadn't engineered humanity as an experiment, but as a failsafe, seeding the land with life that could be recalled and repurposed when needed. Sarah looked at her hands, now translucent and webbed, and saw them for what they truly were: weapons forged in the deepest trenches, designed to fight horrors from beyond the stars. Each transformed human was a living calculation, their new bodies engineered to channel forces that could tear reality apart. The Meridian's hull dissolved beneath them, its metal and fiberglass becoming part of the greater equation. Sarah and Emily fell into the waiting waters, but they didn't drown. They were already breathing something far richer than air. Dr. Marcus smiled at them, his transformed face radiant with purpose. Now you understand. The song isn't a lure, it's a battle cry. Above them, the sky began to crack. The Deep Mother's voice resonated through their new forms. They come. We fight. We protect. We survive. Sarah took her place in the formation, her body moving to positions she somehow already knew. The equation was almost complete. Around the world, in other depths, other transformed humans were doing the same, preparing for a war humanity had never known it was bred to fight. The stars were going out one by one, eaten by something vast and dark. But in the depths, the Deep Mother's children began to shine brighter, their light no longer bioluminescence, but something far more fundamental: the light of creation itself, ready to be weaponized. Sarah felt Emily and Marcus beside her, their forms now perfectly evolved for what was to come. The choir sang its final calculations, and reality began to bend. They had all come from the sea, and the sea had prepared them for this moment. The harvest was coming. But this time, the harvesters would find their seed had grown thorns.